Hello folks, and welcome to yet another Legend Scale review. Today's victim is Iron Factory IF-EX14 Ultimate Commander, aka Optimus Prime. This version is meant to emulate IDW's Optimus Prime / Orion Pax in his Cybertron mode, which is quite similar to Dreamwave's War Within version. The proportions of this figure are quite exaggerated, obviously a little bit more chunky than the average Prime. He's got a sort of relatively small head and very thick limbs, but that is, of course, faithful to the source material. In terms of paint, he's got a lot of this very eye-catching silver, and then the orange and sort of sky blue there, picking out details like the headlights and the eyes, if that will focus for me. Yeah, I think you can see that on camera. And a little bit of gunmetal grey just for contrast. The plastics themselves, the red and blue, are very saturated in terms of colour, so you're certainly not going to miss him in a crowd. Very bright, very vibrant. But yes, the sculpt also has lots of little details, little notches and grooves all over him that sort of help break up those larger areas of plastic. And yeah, they really make him seem like a quality figure. Honestly, at first glance, I would say you could be forgiven for thinking that he doesn't actually transform, because he's really not got much kibble that would give that away. I mean, maybe these hinges in the shoulders, but look how clean that back is. In terms of his posability, his head is on a ball joint, so you get the rotation and a little bit of tilt there. The plate at the base of his neck is on a hinge, so you get a little bit more up and down with that. His shoulders rotate a little bit at this wheel, and then they have an outward hinge here, although that's more for the transformation. The shoulders themselves are on a ball joint, which is quite limited by this shoulder pad, although it does move. It's scarily tight though. Can you imagine if I broke him here in camera? But yeah, I don't often make use of that. On this version of Optimus, on the recolors, it's not as tight, but it's a little bit scary on him. Yeah, it's still very limited shoulders even with that. He then, of course, has bicep rotation, an elbow hinge, and a wrist rotation. Full 360 at the waist. These little front skirts flip up, and then ball joints at the hips. Quite impressive range on those. Thigh rotation, knee bend, just a single joint, and then rather limited ball joints at the ankles, and a toe hinge. I have to say, he does show his age when it comes to his articulation. Tends to feel a bit stiff compared to the more recent figures. Especially when it comes to those shoulders, they're a bit awkward. His articulation isn't bad by any means, but it's a little bit dated is all. I usually do accessories before size comparisons, but I'm going to do a few comparisons now, and you'll see why in a minute. First up here are just a few Iron Factory Autobots. So you can see he stands a good head or two taller than sort of the standard Carbots. There he is with Iron Factory Jetfire. There he is with his mentor, Iron Factory Alpha Trion and Elita 1. And of course, what is Optimus without Megatron? There he is with Iron Factory's version. They're about exactly the same height if you go by the tops of their heads. And yeah, I think they look really good together. There he is with all of his variants. You've got the obligatory Nemesis and Shatterglass versions, and also the Nova Prime version. That's him with the usual bunch. They got the Iron Factory Runabout and Core Class Soundwave and a Lego Stormtrooper. Now, for the accessories. Technically, I've really only shown you half of the figure so far, just because he has that much extra stuff. The original release version also came with an entire other Elita 1 figure, this 16A, Illyria they called it. We'll take a look at her in a different video. She was in her, like, an entirely self-contained box of her own within Optimus's box, and it is Prime Week after all, so we'll leave her out for now. Most of all this stuff is armor. this bit over here for his powered up mode, but we'll take a look at the non-armor parts first. This stuff in the top row here, I had equipped on him to begin with. It's the default parts to recreate his look from the comics. We've got his classic blaster, G1 style blaster. You've got the pair of twin arm cannons. Just tab onto those ports on his forearms. And then this other pair of cannons that tabs onto that peg in his back. Then he also has an Energon axe, a handheld one, as opposed to one that deploys from his wrist. And then this Energon sword. Now these two can combine into a single, what would you call this, a sword spear? Sword staff? I don't know, but they can do that. And then this other pair of heavy blasters, they're not the same as the classic blaster, different design. Those come in the powered up mode as well, they're a bit more relevant. But yeah, before we equip the armor, a couple of things to do to prepare. You need to extend the torso upwards to leave this gap, and then tuck the head inside the chest, just like that, and fold away the toes. Now, there's no particular order you have to attach these pieces in, but I'm just going to start from the bottom, because then he'll actually be able to stand up on his own. First thing, take these leg extensions. There's a port in the side of his leg, and a peg here. They'll just slot over like that. Now this crotch guard just attaches on here by friction, doesn't clip in or anything. The chest armor, now this will slot into that gap we just created, and there's a little notch that it needs to line up. I'm not sure if you can see this, but he has kind of a central strut that attaches the two halves of the torso. That notch needs to line up with that, and it should go all the way in. It shouldn't sit at an angle, which it might if it's not pushed in correctly. That's how it should look. And then we have two shoulder pauldron things. They have a little tab, and we'll just go over the regular shoulders like that. A pair of gauntlets. Now these open up at the bottom, and there's a little peg that the normal hand grabs onto. And that can close back up. Same on the other side. Might be a bit stiff the first time you do it, but it'll loosen up. And then this large jetpack piece, it goes on that same peg that the cannons were attached to before. So this is his powered up mode. Oh yes, you need to take the arm blasters, they are now leg blasters. They slot into those ports on the side. Yeah, that's the powered up mode, which appears to be based on God Jinrai. You have a few options for what you do with the rest of this stuff. These two heavy blasters, you can use those for a traditional God Jinrai look. I believe he usually has a pair of blasters like that. But if you don't want to use those, they can store on the wings, just like this. There are also a pair of ports here you can plug them into, but I prefer this method. So yeah, you can take in this sword spear, is that what we're calling it? You could of course have it separated into the two melee weapons, but this configuration allows him to hold his regular blaster as well. Now there's no official place to store this piece. You can tab it into the back, sort of give him jet boosters, or what I like to do is use the port inside of the rifle and just store it like that, give him sort of a beefier gun. But yeah, his articulation is pretty much the same in this mode. The leg extensions have a lot more tilt on those ankles, but then he has no wrist swivels anymore, the gauntlets don't have one, and these shoulder armor pieces kind of restrict the shoulders a bit. So yeah, oh of course yes, this crotch guard greatly restricts that forward motion. I've tried to get up as far up as I can there, but it does restrict that range. You could always leave it off, that's not essential, but that's the complete look. I really do like this power-up feature. It's one of my favourite kinds of gimmicks to get with a Transformer, especially in Optimus Prime. It suffers from the same drawbacks as any of this type of gimmick. The armor gimmick, mainly the decreased articulation and some odd proportions, you know, sort of the waist is very narrow comparatively, and the knees are very high up, but without dedicating a lot more engineering to that, there's not much you can do. It's still fun. I mean, a lot more fun, in my opinion, than a hollow trailer full of junk, as you could probably guess from the Hot Soldiers Prime review, if you've seen it. Just a few more size comparisons for him in this mode. There he is with Jetfire again. They're not about the same height. Jetfire's armor parts can actually be interchanged with a few of Optimus's, if that's something you want to do. There he is with Megatron again, and Iron Factory Overlord. Overlord's maybe a more appropriate nemesis form in this mode. I'm not sure how big Overlord is supposed to be compared to God Jinrai. Maybe the Mech Fans Toys oversized knockoff would be a better size. I don't know, I don't have it, but I think it works alright. Well enough for me, at least. There he is with all of his variants and their powered-up forms. And there he is with the usual suspects. As you may have expected, you can't transform him with the armor on. So I've just reverted him back to his original state here. But first things first, to get him in a truck mode, fold his toes in, move the kneecaps down, and then collapse the legs. You want to tab those together, rotate the waist 180 degrees, and then this little panel that the cans are attached to, you want to hinge that down on its double hinge there. Next, let me see, tuck the head inside the torso. Might be a little bit tricky, you need to make sure it's straight, but yeah, tuck it in and then cover it up. Flip this whole assembly upwards. The arms, rotate the biceps 180 degrees, bend the elbows this way, and then open the shoulders up. That will allow you to use the pegs on his sides of his waist. They will tap into the arms to lock those together. Now, lining up some of this stuff can be tricky with all of his joints. I mean, yeah, not quite sitting flush there, but good enough for the purposes of the video. So that's the basic truck mode, but we still have all of the extra parts to deal with. If we bring in the leg extensions and open those up, you want to tab these on where they were before, using the same port and the same peg, but now extended like this. Next, bring in the jetpack, wing pack, I don't know what you call it. You want to open up this panel and then fold these weapons down next to it. The wings have a little tab that lines up with a slot on the side of the weapons. Do that on both sides. Now we can take the shoulder pauldron armor pad things. Not sure what the technical term is for them, but those peg into two little ports there, using the peg on top. Then the gauntlets are next. Those will tab together like so, and they will attach underneath this panel here. So then, the chest armor, the head will be out. You want to rotate that, tuck it away. It has little tabs on the sides as well, and there are slots on the insides of those weapons again that I'll just tuck away in there. Just like that. Then, last piece, the Crotch Guard, that just attaches on the back, like that. Then, this will all sit on here. There are 2 little holes in the opened up area there, and corresponding tabs on the bottom of that assembly we've just completed. But yeah, that is the full truck mode. Now you can take the heavy blasters, tap those on the sides. I can also slot into those ports on the top, but I think this looks better. No official place to store his blaster. It can go on one of those ports, or what I like to do is put it on here like this and make a little turret with the smaller cannons. It looks a bit more symmetrical than just sticking in the ports. Nowhere to put the melee weapons, unfortunately. Unless you count that, I suppose. But yeah, as with all Cybertronian vehicles, you will either love or hate it. He does have very visible hands there, but otherwise he does actually look like what he's supposed to, at least in the base truck form. Just so you kind of get an idea of how big this mode is, here he is with rather muck and like Stormtrooper again. So we see he's nearly double the length of a standard car. So that is Iron Factory Ultimate Commander. General thoughts, he's very fun, especially just messing about with all those armor pieces. Not the most posable of Iron Factory figures, but certainly nice to look at. He's got a lot of bits, all of which have potential to be lost, so there's that to keep in mind. These days he's become quite hard to find and quite expensive when you do find him. He is a very good figure, but I think it's definitely a character that Iron Factory should revisit, like they're doing with Soundwave and the Datsuns and so on. Both to update his articulation and to make it a little bit easier for people to get a hold of an Optimus that fits with their collection. But yeah, that's all from me. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out the channel if you enjoyed, and goodbye.